All right, so it's a little late, and fix this little heater. Anyhow, it's a little late here, but what time is it actually? It's kind of, what is it? 2 o'clock in the morning, which is not uncommon for me because I have, insomnia. So it's not uncommon. But typically, I find stuff that I need to get taken care of anyway, and I can't do it during the day because the kids are a little bit nuts. So, whatever. But I saw on I forget where I was. I was just scrolling through, and there were people who were talking about moving to Seattle because they were employed by some company, and that they were shocked that they could not find a place to live because every place that they've actually reading through the story, somebody just did an article on them. But reading through the story, they basically packed up and left from, I forget where, but it was, like Virginia or something like that. And literally packed up family and everything and drove out here because one of their friends a long time ago who had lived out here and moved back, probably, I don't know, they were saying, years ago, said that, you should just move there and get in an extended stay or get an apartment and then just basically later get a house. So they didn't do any sort of checking whatsoever. They knew that housing costs here were high and they were prepared for that. So they came here and literally they got into an extended stay. And when they went to go to find an apartment, they were kind of shocked. One, because the apartments are pretty expensive. Now, the price of apartments are starting to go down. But for two, they couldn't really get an apartment because they were talking about they have pets. Not that Seattle is against apartments. No. Not that Seattle apartments are against pets. But if you have too many pets or if you have big dogs, most places are going to tell you no. You have to have a little dog the size of Quincy, and then that's it. So typically they'll let you have one dog and that's it, or they'll let you have two cats and that's it. Once you get above two, then they won't let you. That's just kind of how it is. So the apartment was a no-go. And they were saying that they were panicking, but they still had hope. So they spent most of their time looking, and they were talking about how their job was about to start, 2 weeks after they arrived, 2 or so weeks after they arrived. So really, by now, I guess that they are, I don't know what the case is, because this article that was written was like last year. And so they were saying that basically they just couldn't find a place to stay. And they were panicking because homes were A, so expensive, but B, there's just so much competition and that they could not really and truly compete. Right? Now, I don't know the circumstances of it. It was just basically talking about the housing situation in Seattle. Again, this was over a year ago, or about a year ago, looking at this article. And the problems that people face. Because a lot of times I think folks think, well, I have a little bit of money and I have some money saved up and it's not a big deal and I can just go there. But that just doesn't work. You have to definitely have a plan in place. Now, when they were coming here at that time, it was a big, big crunch in terms of apartments. You couldn't hardly find much. Now there's a glut. There's been a little bit of a glut in apartments. But people are moving a little bit away from Seattle because of the sickness, and they can live anywhere they want to live. So if you can live wherever you want to live and you can remotely work, or work remotely, see, it's late, then people are going to do that. And so I don't know the circumstance now. I don't know what happened to these people or whatever the case may be. But One of the things that I tell folks to do, because I have a lot of people who often say, hey, I'm wanting to move to Seattle, or you have people that will tell you, like, my goal is to live. They have all these different suburbs in their mind that they want to move to. And I often tell them that you're going to be in for a little bit of a culture shock. It depends on where you're from, but you're going to be in for a little bit of a culture shock on many fronts. Seattle is not a very warm city in terms of just people being outwardly friendly. So that's going to throw a lot of people off. But just in general, the vibe on the east side, when I say east side, I'm talking Bellevue, Redmond, all of those typical players, Mercer Island, it's completely different. It's even more different than what you're going to feel in Seattle. So it is a very isolated feeling. So for me personally, it's not my thing. I don't get too many people now that talk about the east side. One, the prices there are just astronomically high. But for two, folks are now wanting to find something that makes a lot more sense. You don't have a lot of city there. It's mainly just all suburban living. For some people, that's fine. But here, the suburbs stretch and stretch and stretch, and all you're going to see is just suburbs, strip malls, different things like that. And that gets old, to be honest with you. The only city of size on the east side is Bellevue. And of course, you have downtown Bellevue, but Bellevue's having a bit of an issue in terms of not only the price, but just traffic and logistics. The city was never designed to be the size that it is. And given the fact that Amazon's making a heavy presence there, as well as other companies, Amazon's not the only one, but there's other companies, Facebook as well. They're all really latching on to Bellevue. The city just doesn't have the infrastructure. And it's never going to have that infrastructure. And the reason why I say it never will is because if you just look at downtown Bellevue, there's not much more that you can do. I mean, there's a reason why Sound Transit had to dig underground. One, because it's kind of hoity-toity over there. But for two, there's really no other place to put it. And so they have to build underground. With that said, there's not a lot of room for highways and things like that. So you're looking at a city that in the future will be heavily gridlocked. It doesn't matter how many Sound Transit trains you have running through there. It's going to be a heavily gridlocked city because just going a few blocks by car is going to be painful. It's just facts. It's a tiny town, but it looks like it's Manhattan. And so that's a problem. That's not a good quality of life for some people. So when you add in the cost, you add in the quality of living factor, Bellevue is out for a lot of people, as well as most of the east side. Then when you look at Seattle, yeah, same thing. It's just not for a family. People do it all the time. But for me, it's just not as conducive. Now, people will talk about Tacoma and say this and that about it, but the vibe is just completely different. The vibe is completely different. So what I tell folks is that not only is it much more affordable down here, the vibe is different. Stay to yourself, don't get involved in stupid stuff. As long as you don't get involved in stupid stuff, typically you'll be okay. A lot of the things you hear in the news are because of something that went wrong. And so as long as you're not into that type of thing, then you typically will be okay. I mean, you're going to have the occasional one-offs, but you should be fine. And that's kind of how it is in this entire region. But that's not what this video is about. The video is mainly talking about these people and their circumstances and how to really avoid that. One of the things I tell people to do is find what makes best sense for you. So you need to decide out of this area, the big three, which side of town do you want to, or side of the region you want to be on? Do you want to be closer to Seattle or the Seattle area, Bellevue, or Tacoma? Because it really and truly makes a lot of sense. Once you decided where you want to go, then you can go from there. Now, some people will talk about they want to live in South King County. Do your research on South King County. I'm not going to disparage an area, but do your research on South King County. Decide if that makes sense for you. South King County is Kent, Sumner, Federal Way, all of those. Um, Decide if that is what you want to really and truly do. There's some options there, right? If you're wanting to go north of Seattle, you obviously have many places. Everett, you have Kirkland, you have, what else is up there? Marysville, which is far, far north. You have a few different options. You have Linwood. Linwood's a really good, solid choice, right? The problem is that a lot of these places just don't have the housing stock. So I don't really mention Linwood much. Linwood would be one of the places that I would tell people to definitely take a look at. The big issue again is just congestion. The I-5 is always bad there. The transportation sucks. They are putting the light rail system up there. Obviously, stations are starting to open, that type of thing. But still, I don't think it's going to really move the needle as much as what folks think. Because once you leave that corridor, you have the rest of Linwood. And so it's becoming very densely packed with people. So I don't know. But other than that, it is a really great area. The problem is, again, there's not a lot of new construction. You're not going to find a lot of homes. You're really dealing with available inventory and stock that's there. So houses that have been built and been around for a while. And so that's going to be challenging. And a lot of people are attracted to Linwood and Edmonds and all of those places. So you don't have a lot of builds going on in that general area. When it comes to the east side, Bellevue, you have homes and things like that. That's the area where a lot of people buy a house and tear it down. The buy and tear downs are going to be mainly in Seattle and in Bellevue. And when I say Seattle and Bellevue, I'm talking some of the suburbs there, some of the suburbs around Bellevue. There's a lot of buy and tear downs, right? Those folks have the money to do that. For those who can't afford to do it, then I would say you're going to be kind of out of luck. If you don't make enough money to be able to buy a decent home, the east side's out. I typically don't mention the east side unless someone talks about it or asks questions. I talk about the south. And the reason why is because there is still a little bit more housing stock. There are more builds that are going on. Actually, there's a lot of companies that are building single family homes still. We do have available land down here, believe it or not. Orting is a good example of that. That's pretty much a bedroom community of Tacoma. DuPont, they're out of space quite a bit, but they're still adding homes. There's a lot of homes available. Those are very nice homes, right? And you can work between Olympia or Tacoma, either way. So to avoid that type of situation, definitely make sure that you have everything lined up. Don't expect things to work smoothly. When we first moved to Seattle, we had called several places. One place put us on a waiting list and we never heard back from them. The other place we called and we basically put our deposit and everything. We did everything over the phone and through fax so that place would be available for us when we got here. The office was closed. We had to spend the night in a hotel with the U-Haul. We spent the night in the hotel in Bellevue. So it was really, really difficult, right? There are certain areas that you don't want to live, obviously in Seattle in terms of apartments. Same thing with Tacoma. So do your research. Make sure that you really and truly focus on what's important to you. Once you've narrowed down, again, the area of the region you want to live in, then narrow it down even more and decide where you want to go. I often tell people to live close to downtown. And the video I did that pretty much kind of showed you the map of downtown Tacoma and the details of that explains that, because you literally are very well connected. It's one of the Seattle and Tacoma are very well connected cities. Some people complain here that the transit's not that good, but it's actually pretty decent. And it's getting better, but it's a pretty well connected downtown. So you're able to get to where you got to go. If you need to leave the region, you can go north or south. It's pretty simple. And so it's a better bet, affordability wise, in terms of just you know family amenities. The job market's not that bad. You're not going to get the same type of pay of what you're going to get up in Seattle, but the job market's not that bad. You can also work in Olympia. Olympia is also facing some of the same issues that Tacoma faced early on. So you're starting to see the shift happen because people can't afford Tacoma. So now we're hitting that mark of where affordability is out the window. I did videos telling people buy now, and this was probably a couple of years ago. And there were people who did so, and they said thank you. Now, I don't hear from those people any longer, but that's besides the point. But they were like, thank you, because had we not bought when we did, we wouldn't have been able to do it. And so it's one of those types of situations. Now, the prices are so high. I tell people, if you're able to get a house here, definitely do it. Olympia is probably going to be a better bet for some people, believe it or not. And so, can you find something here that's not bad in terms of price range? Yeah. I mean, you could. You could find something that's pretty affordable, but my affordable is going to be different than yours. But $700,000 is what you're going to face up in Seattle. So that, and down here it's going to be a little less than half of that. So, or a little bit. No, that's wrong. 400,000 is what our average is, right? A little over that. So it's a lot more affordable than what you're going to see up in Seattle. Olympia is going to be a lot more affordable than what you're going to see in Tacoma. But again, you're getting much further away. And once you get down to Olympia, there's not a lot to do. To me, I've been to Olympia a couple of times. There's just not a lot to do. To get up to Tacoma's 30 something miles. To get to Seattle is going to be 60 something miles. So it's not where it's at, in my opinion. I would tell people best thing to do is probably skip the apartment route. There's some people who just do not want a home. They are folks who are going to be living here for a little while and leaving. I know someone who actually moved here, went to the studio, and as I was closing up one day, and he said, I forget where he's from, but he said, I watched your channel. I moved out here. He worked at McMenamins for a little bit. He said today was his last day and he wanted to stop in and just say hi and introduce himself because he was moving back. And I asked him if he was coming back again. He's like, he's not really sure. There's stuff that happened back where he's from, so he had to go back. But he wanted to thank me and he really liked the city. So you have people like that where an apartment makes good sense because they don't know if they're going to stay here long term or not. Some people move out here to check it out, or whatever the case may be, or they need a break. That's different. But if you're going to come out here to live long term, I would say your best bet would probably be to get a house. Because of the simple fact that homes are going up so high in value, if you take a year to live in an apartment, and you're really working within some thin margins here, you're probably going to be priced out. And there's a lot of people that are priced out. The moral of the story is, when I was reading this article, is those folks were priced out. And they didn't realize that. They were priced out of the market. They had a job, in Seattle. They were employed, but they were priced out of the market because they were using old information, right? It's just not that easy anymore. Down here, it's kind of the same thing now, is that if you spend the year or so to get an apartment, there's a good possibility you're going to be priced out of the market. There are still some bargains. But again, if you look at some of these other cities around here, Spanaway, Midland, places that folks used to consider pretty far out, those prices are going up. Some of these other places, Graham, Bonnie Lake, all of these places, the prices are going up pretty fast. So I would say if you have the ability to do so, definitely buy a house. But make sure that you get all your ducks in a row. Make sure that you have a pre-approval letter. Make sure you get a good realtor. Make sure that you at least visit. That is so critical, to visit. Make sure you tour the area. Don't get into, and right now is probably a good time because, a lot of places are closed. But I tell folks, don't go and just visit the touristy places because that's going to give you a false sense of reality. You know, people go to Seattle and they go to all the tourist hotspots and they love it because it's just so different and unique. Well, because it's a tourist trap and that's what it's designed to do, right? But you need to go into the city. You need to go around downtown. You need to go away from all of the tourist stuff and be amongst the people. You know what I mean? You know, go into places where there's this eclectic uniqueness, like Ballard and Fremont and, you know, Greenwood and all these, Finneywood, all these different places in around the Green Lake area. Go into Seattle and see what life is like. You know, where's the grocery store? What does the grocery store look like? Take a look at the schools. Take a look at your surroundings. You know, go to those places and be a part of the community and see if it's a good fit for you. It may not be. It may not be. You know, don't go. Some people, you know, when they're vacationing, they go to where all the tourists are and they grab them a soda and they grab them a sandwich and then they're eating there and they get this impression like, oh, this is so cool. But you're amongst a bunch of people who are like you. They're from someplace else and they're coming here. But if you go into some neighborhood and you go to a cafe, you know, how do the people treat you? You know what I mean? Like, how does the regular folks in the community, how do they treat you? Do people smile at you? Do they not smile at you? Do you notice that no one's paying attention to you? Just pay attention to that, because people move here with this false sense, and then once they start living here, they hate it. Same thing for Tacoma. If you come down to Tacoma, it's going to be a lot nicer. People are going to be nicer, but you're not going to have the poshness and the splash of Seattle. You're just not. If that's what you're expecting, not going to happen. You're not going to have the posh and the pretty of what you have up in Bellevue. Tacoma is a gritty city. It is a gritty city, and that is what people love about Tacoma, is that it's a gritty city. It's a great city, but it's gritty. It's not a princess. You know what I mean? It's just not a princess city, and I think that that's what people here cherish. They love that impression. You know, they like the fact that people fear Tacoma, even though there's nothing to be afraid of. People like that impression. But go to places outside of downtown. Visit downtown. Look at downtown. Go to 6th Avenue. Go to these different places. But also go into these other communities, right? Go into the Lincoln District. You know what I mean? Like, look around. See what that's like. Some people are afraid of it. You know, go to the South End. Go to the South Side. You know, go into Old Town. You know, the problem that I'm seeing with Tacoma is a lot of areas are now big tourist areas. You know what I mean? Like, if you look at downtown and you go towards the zoo, all of that's just a big tourist trap. But be a part of it. Go check it out. See what it's like. Go to Steilacoom, right? Go to University Place. Go to these other places where people are and be a part of the community. You know, go get your food there, sit down, interact with people, see what that's like. Because that is what you're going to see every single day versus people being extra friendly in the tourist areas and all the fun and the glitz and the glamour. That's not going to be the reality of every day. So go to the grocery store. You know, if you find that University Place is you're the place that you want to be, go to the grocery store. You know what I mean? Check it out. See what it would be like. Drive around. Everybody's got GPS. Drive around. Take a look and see if this makes sense. So buying a house doesn't have to be super scary, because then you have a good impression. But keep in mind that if you're coming from someplace like where I'm from, I think Sweets is up. If you're coming from someplace like where I'm from, and you come here, the price of homes are not what you see there is not what you're going to get here, right? So what you see there, and you try to get that same thing here, it's going to be 3 times as much. So be very humble. There's nothing wrong with getting a home that you need to add a little bit to and fix up versus getting something that you can't afford. Taxes go up, utilities go up. Our utilities are astronomically high. And that's one of the reasons why I tell people don't don't buy a house right at what you can afford, because then you're not factoring in everything else. You know what I mean? Like the utilities here, and they're going to go up. The utilities here are expensive. The gas bill, expensive. You know, luckily for us, we only use it in the winter, but it's expensive. The electric, water, and sewer, expensive. And the trash and all that. I've never been in a city that's as pricey as it is here in terms of just the utilities. They're astronomical. And don't think that you're going to get any better up in Seattle. It's pricey up there too. It's worse. So make sure that when you get a home, and if the bank approves you for $500,000, don't go get a house for $485,000, because even though you're able to make that payment, you also have to factor in the insurance. You have to factor in which, you know, who knows what's going to happen with that. It can go up and down and change. Property tax. That's going to be a big pain. And then the utilities. They jack rates up all the time. So keep that in mind. Humble yourself. But yeah, I've had a couple of people ask me, like, you know, I'm coming here soon. I'm going to come check it out. I would say, big word of advice, if you're going to stay here and you know you're going to stay here, I wouldn't even bother with an apartment if you can. Now, some people can't help it, and that's completely understandable, and it's okay. But if you can get a house, I would focus on where you want to live. Don't go to the touristy areas, because that's just a cherry on top. Go to the places where you probably are going to end up living. Choose whether you're going to be up in Everett. You know, choose if you're going to be down in Seattle or over in Bellevue or down in Tacoma. Choose which area that you want to be in. And then once, you know, go visit those places. Drive to those cities. Spend time in those cities. Don't go to the touristy areas. Spend time in the neighborhoods. And then decide which one makes better sense for you. Now, 9 times out of 10, a lot of people are going to say that they like Tacoma better. Only because there's a lot of stuff to do. Traffic is not as bad. It just is. I'm going to be honest. Bellevue downtown by far looks better than anything Tacoma's going to get in the next 10 years. Facts. Downtown Seattle by far, if you look at the buildings, look better than anything Tacoma's going to get in the next 20 years. But when it comes to just your quality of living, I think Tacoma's going to edge those out once people actually move around in the community and just be a part of it. You'll see over time that it makes much more sense. But anyhow, I can go on and on and on. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure you join the Discord. We talk about literally every single thing. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, I will see you. Take care.